Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm really honored today to have Chad and Todd with me today. And we're going to talk about the importance of the unconscious. It's a really fascinating subject that I want to dig into. Chad and Todd, where can people find you?
Probably at our website at pathwiseleadership.com.
Okay. You are both on LinkedIn, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes, we're both on LinkedIn under our names or pathwiseleadership.com.
Okay, brilliant. So the importance of unconscious. When we first met, everybody who watches this knows that I always do a preparation meeting. So we had this preparation meeting, and Todd was late. And Todd comes in, and Chad says, "You're late," and Todd says to Chad, "You're ugly." Now, and I'm sitting there thinking, God, what's going on here? And then Todd actually says, and this is really the opener for this, which is during that that exchange, and goes on in a lot of business and a lot of business meetings, is that I'm sitting there going, do these guys hate each other? Is this a joke or what's going on here? And of course, this is all going on in our heads. And really, that's what I wanted to do, to open this up and talk about the importance of the unconscious and how that's going on. So over to you guys.
I think I said technically, Chad, you're still ugly.
Yeah, you did actually.
Well, the problem with that, Tim, is Todd's always late and I'm never ugly. See that?
And so I started to share it is basically like two brothers or two best friends for 30 years or two colleagues. There's a dense amount of material and chess play, let's say, in those moments. And so the question is, was there an assertion for authority in that moment? Was it comical and just sort of being friendly? Were we nervous? So there's a lot going on unconsciously. And then I shared with you, Tim, that like your reaction to what was going on, share with us what was in your head.
I had my poker face on.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of like, I've come to a meeting and I've not met these people before. And I'd obviously seen your backgrounds in terms of looked you up on the web and stuff like that. So yeah. I'm sitting there going, is this... what's going on here? And my brain is going, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And then you lovelily, Todd, basically broke the ice by explaining things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is that kind of how you saw it, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we talk about the unconscious is what all is really going on in the moment, when in our interactions with people and in our life, and then this other factor, which is really important, was what is it that we think is going on, and how what we think is going on isn't really what's going on. It's what we like to think is going on.
Because we're trying to read the room, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a guy named Keegan from Harvard here in the States, and he talks about these stages of brain development, and that we all can be actually using the parts of our brain that we are like children. Basically, under stress or ambiguity, our brain function goes down. And if you put brain scanning stuff on us and on a 5-year-old, we're kind of utilizing the same parts of the brain. And when we're in that state, we don't know anything that's happening at an unconscious level, either outside of us or inside of us. But in psychoanalysis, which suspension or Pathwise Leadership is based on, there's a term called suspension of attention, which is an activity which is very similar to flow or mindfulness, where in this moment right now, as I'm interacting with you, I can become more present and my brain function shifts to these higher cognitive levels, and I can begin to be aware of all the subtleties that are happening between myself and others and how to relate to those. So like, for example, Tim, when you brought this up today, that this was the topic, I was a little shocked, and it was wonderful. And in my own unconscious, I was like, well, do I react to this, or is this just a wonderful way to get a conversation started?
I think it's also when I'm doing this, I'm sitting here and I'm going, what time is it? Is there a comment coming in? And but I also find that when I forget about that and I sit back and I actually and we have a conversation, for me it's far more comfortable. But that's probably because our brains are lazy and we actually like doing less, don't we?
Yes, we definitely do. And it's a hard line because it's this effort to be more conscious of what's happening without necessarily being self-conscious, right? So self-conscious is actually kind of going down in function, where you get nervous about yourself and you're judging yourself. And even all those judgments can be sort of in your unconscious. And if you can see, oh, I'm judging myself right now, that's not really what I mean by being present.
So what can we do? How is there a way that we can kind of manage this? Because it's not just about us having a bit of banter in terms of saying that you're ugly or you're late. We're doing this every day in meetings, aren't we? And it's even more difficult for us, especially when we may just see the top half of somebody, or they may not even have the video on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's important that we really have a right valuation and understanding of the concept of the unconscious, because our ego and our sort of ordinary way of thinking doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And it's kind of interesting because if you read, Freud introduced the idea of the unconscious to the medical community in Vienna, and he said, despite the obviousness of what I'm about to share and the rationality of it, you're not going to like it. You're going to reject it. And, I find that with when we work with people, there's this sort of need to understand the concept sort of rationally at first, and then start to explore what's really going on in myself versus what I think is going on in myself. And Todd refers to sort of psychoanalytic, psychodynamic. And this is where we sort of, with people, we all develop these sort of ways of understanding the world and how people see us that's sort of neurologically created in childhood. And what happens is, as we become adults, we still live those realities, and they're usually pretty adaptive, but in many ways they're not. And it's usually what creates the limitations in our leadership and in our relationships. And all of that stuff for people is quite unconscious. So, for example, maybe in childhood, I get the idea that I'm kind of a disappointment. And, I grow up and I do well and I'm successful, but I still sort of live with that perception. And in psychology, we call that transference.
Right.
But it's likely the reality that a lot of people are not disappointed in us. The problem is it's dynamic. And so I compensate for that by, let's say, trying to be over impressive, maybe take credit for other people's works. This is just kind of one pattern of many personalities. And that starts to limit us because people get annoyed with us trying to be impressive. And then that causes us problems in our home lives. And so the problem is all of this stuff that's going on is unconscious. I don't know it. People say, why are you trying to be over impressive? And I say, well, what are you talking about? No, I'm not. This is really true. This is what I did. I don't see it.
And what you're meaning with the unconscious is that in a way we're not thinking about it, because as a being, I exist because of what I think.
Well, yeah, we're only thinking it, but we're not aware of it, and that's why it's unconscious. It's like you don't even know you're feeling like you're a disappointment. So that all that is the sort of, you could say the growth process is to become conscious of the unconscious. So that's, hey, I'm noticing right now, I'm feeling this transference going on, and I can see it. When I see it, I'm not so likely to act on it in the ways that get me in trouble. And this is even for the highest functioning people.
Yeah.
They just, they haven't learned about the unconscious. So it's not a concept even for them.
And the only way to sort of be able to realize the unconscious is to see it happening in real time, because sort of the reflection on it is already delayed and has bias. What's interesting, and just two little brief stories. One is, and this might be strange to some of your viewers, but we all think we are our thinking, and we're not. And if you were to watch like a small child who's born, who starts to crawl, they basically think that they're their bodies. They're completely ego attached to it. And then later they're having emotions, but later they can control their emotions. They see, oh, if I cry, mom or dad comes. If I smile, I get more candy. And then later they go on. And so they think that they are their emotions. And then later they start to be able to think rationally. And if I do this, I get that. And they can plan across time. And so their ego attaches that they are logical thinking. And for us now, it's an abstract reasoning. Most of us get paid. And if you think that you are your thinking, and your thinking is in abstract reasoning is always taking whatever data is current and projecting possibilities into the future. So most of us go around in life when we're on our thinking in the fantasy of what's possible and missing what's actually happening in the moment, or the opposite. So like Tim, if you and I sat for coffee and under the table you kicked me, you seem nice, but if you kicked me in my shin, for a moment I'd be present, but then I'd be mad at you. And then I'd go to my next meeting and this person that I meet would be really wonderful and I'd be talking to them, but I'd still be mad at you. And so this emotion from a past experience would be obscuring my next experience. So I wouldn't be in the moment there either. But it's really interesting that in the moment that you kick me, I'm present. And that's because the body, the nervous system is always taking in present sense data. Like, what is the temperature of the air of the room I'm in right now? What is the sensation of my rear end in my seat right now? What are all this?
Do I want to go to the toilet?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So all real-time data, if you pay attention to it, you ask, like, how do you get into the present? You pay attention to the data that's occurring now, even just for a moment. And as soon as you're paying attention to that data that's always coming, we just ignore it because we think we are our thinking. The moment you do that, then you're present. And then you can see all these other things happening.
And is that what we need to do to understand the unconscious, or what? Mm-hmm. Explain.
Well, I have a story maybe where I saw somebody see it, and it was an interesting experience. So this sort of happens all the time, but it shows how it works. So there was a guy I was on an airplane with, and he had just been promoted to a battalion chief or a fire battalion chief. And he was a pretty young guy, and he was like, "What do you do?" And I told him a little bit about Pathwise. He goes, "I could use that because I have some old timers that are, that I passed up, and there's a lot of politics. So this sounds really interesting." And really bright young guy. And at the end of the plane ride, we were exchanging information, and he goes, just tell me one thing, Chad. And I go, "Yeah, what is it?" He goes, "Is Pathwise a cult?" And this is because we work with all the different personality types, and he's a very high functioning paranoid, right? So that I knew right away that's what's going on. And I said, in a non-defensive way, yeah, kind of. And he goes, "Great." He goes, "Great, I'm in." And so it was 2 or 3 months later, and I was sitting with him, and he'd just taken this transference class where for paranoids, they tend to sort of kind of worry, what's people's agenda? How are they taking care of themselves in this situation? And so we're sitting down for coffee, and he goes, "I just don't understand this transference thing." He goes, "Well, hold on a second, Chad, one question. Are these conversations confidential?" And I said, "Well, it's interesting you should say that, Travis, because not everybody asks that question in these one-on-one meetings. That's very interesting. I don't understand this transference, and we're talking." And then he was so curious. And I think this is big. The curiosity to understand is a big start. And so he was so curious, and I had to go to a class. He sort of rode in the Uber with me. And in the Uber ride, he was getting married. And I said, "Well, do you have any trust issues? Like you've got your fiance and stuff." He goes, No. Lots of trust. And he goes, "Well, there was the one time that I found a skateboard in our rental house, and I looked at the manufacturer history to see if it was manufactured before or after we rented the house." And I said, "Travis, not everybody goes to that level of detail to sort of, and he's like, "Oh yeah, okay." So, and then we roll up onto where the class is going to be. And I'm getting out to go teach the class. And he said, I got one more question, Chad." He goes, "Are your classes recorded?" And he goes, and he saw it. And this is what Todd was talking about. In the present moment, he saw what he was doing, and he just had this, "Oh crap, this is it." So it wasn't intellectual. It was a direct experience with his own transference, his own unconscious process in the moment.
We've lost your sound, Todd.
Can I say one thing really quick, Tim?
Please.
Yeah, so even like, let's say about 4 minutes ago, the last time that you were speaking, this is your show and you're driving it, but it was interesting. There was this transition. You went from helping us, shepherding this conversation, to you became interested, right? I heard the transition, and I don't know if you noticed it, but it was.
I did,
yeah. It's these little subtle things like that, and then because of that, the conversation can open up in a whole new way.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things about the interview is that this is about you. So I try not to talk about myself, because then I end up talking like this, and it ends up being the Tim Hughes show rather than the Todd and Chad show. So there's that delicate balance.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been looking forward to this for weeks, because I'm a sponge of knowledge, and I'm sitting here, and I know Andrew's the same, who's who listens to pretty much all of them. And he's wrote me a note saying, here I have the opportunity to hear and intelligent people share knowledge that he then can use. And from this is just amazing, at being able to sit here and go, I've got two of the world's best experts on this, and I'm talking to them. What isn't good about that?
It's wonderful. Yes. Does Andrew have a question?
If he's got a question, he will ask it. He will ask, so it will come through. So in terms of this, you talked about trust. One of the big issues that we have in leadership is about trust, especially if we're trying to lead through screens like this and building respect. How is it that we can use the unconscious, and how can is there any techniques that we can use to help do that as leaders?
Yeah, trust tends to be built on empathy, and you can tend to only ask people to do things beyond what they would normally do to the degree that they trust you. And the empathy, in a sense, is how do you share a space with them? Let's say that they're excited about something or they're afraid of something. As a leader, can you empathize to the level of feeling that anxiety that they're having, so that they see that you get them? And then once that they see that you get them, then you can add to them what's possible. But if you jump straight to what's possible, before there's any trust built, any empathy, they may nod yes, but it's less likely that they're going to do it. It's similar. I mean, it's similar to, let's say you have an Apple phone and it's glitching, and you have a meeting in an hour and it's really important, and you're freaking out, and you call the call center, and they're like, oh, today it's rainbows and unicorns and it's so lovely. And you're like, no, my freaking phone doesn't work. Blah. And they're like, just relax and everything's, you're just going to hang up or scream at them. But the second they go, oh crap, yeah, no, that's important, I've seen some other problems like this, and they meet you in affect, then you start to trust them. And they go, this is like this thing that I worked on yesterday. Let's go through this 3-step process, and now I can help you. And that empathy allows you to lead them to a new place.
I've got in my notes here, because we've got about 2 minutes left, hacks to the unconscious. And I don't know why I wrote that, whether you said it or I said it, but it's written. So question, is there something that we can do to hack it?
Well, so I can add to what Todd said too, and then answer this question. One of my teachers said once to the question, how do I be more in relationship with others? And the answer she gave was, you have to see that you're not already. Because the ego, the conscious mind, thinks it already is. And that's what closes the opportunity for an opening to even more relationship. And so that's the see that I'm not what's going on isn't what I think. There's more. Is a starting to move into the unconscious. Same with something like empathy. How do I have more empathy? Well, I realize I don't have it right now, and that realization is hard for the ego to take. But that's the step. That little bit of ego suffering is a movement into towards the truth, and that can open relationship.
In addition to that, And what Chad says is really huge. I would say that a hack can open up a glimpse of something, but really it's a practice over a long time to get good at anything. But one hack is to just sort of say to yourself in your own head right now, any of your viewers, to yourself, I am sitting in this room right now. And really just take it in. I am sitting in this room and I'm looking at the screen, so that you have this experience of yourself where you physically are. And immediately the door opens.
So we've got a question here from Andrew. The unconscious obviously becomes habits in how we deal with the environment around us, but how do we change it so be more positive in situations we struggle in?
Is that all right, Chad, if I go forward?
Sure.
So previously, like what I was saying, where there's empathy and then move. So it's an example of that, but that's based on attachment research, which is a major area of psychology that pretty much everyone agrees on. And it's built on the baby. So a baby's in a room, it's crying. If you go into the room as a parent and you're super calm, the baby looks for attachment, like, do you get me? And if you don't, it just keeps screaming 9 times out of 10. But if you go into the room and you with your mirror neurons sort of have the same experience, oh crap, there's poop, and the kid gets it. If you then start to calm down, the baby calmed down with you. So the way that you can move teams or situations or people to another higher functional level is to meet them where they are, let them know that we all get this together, and then the leader can step above. It's the only way.
Chad, do you want to add to that? Or
Just as though I'd say that the unconscious obviously includes habits. The unconscious is vast. And where my mind goes with this question is towards a sort of positivity in understanding that the struggle that you're feeling is growth.
Chad and Todd, thank you so much for coming on today. The 20 minutes goes very, very quickly. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have as well.
We have. Thank you.
Good. Remind people where they can find you. Is your Pathway website, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's not Pathway, it's Pathwise.
Pathwise, sorry.
PathwiseLeadership.com, or our LinkedIn's Todd Hollow-Bist, Chad Hattrup.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing that expertise, and thank you for all the comments as well today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Andrew says, great show, Chance.
Thank you.